It's true you've been walking the streets in a tattered shirt for the last year, but if you come into the bank and lay down $10 million in foreign exchange, we will say to you, thank you very much, as opposed to you go straight to jail because this was obviously ill-gotten gains. Pakistan has raised $600 million with that bonding exercise. And I'm all in favor of having an amnesty period to get African resources back to Africa. I'm not in favor of having new corruption to create resources that go abroad that we'll have to bring back in 5 years. I don't know how to end it any more than I know how to get rid of the shenanigans in Washington, but then again, you folks have the first crack at that in the caucus. Yes.
Maybe on the same line of corruption, I heard from someone else that with some of the money that was to be sent to Africa as relief from American donors, that there were certain groups that were much more likely to have the money get to the people than other groups that were less likely to get that. Would you care to comment on that?
I'd be delighted to. Tune in at 4 o'clock for an extensive answer to that question. The short answer, which I don't think I'll go into then, is there's in a vast array of organizations, some will be a lot better than others. Some were used to handling food supplies, others weren't. Before the famine, Catholic Relief was handling 80% of the United States food distributions that were going through private groups in Africa. So you didn't have to teach them a lot about that. You didn't have to teach CARE a lot about that. Some groups had to learn pretty much from scratch. Some were fast learners. Some groups were criticized because they held back some relief monies in order to do very much this transition back into development. I'm on the advisory board for USA for Africa. We get terrific criticism from a lot of newspapers because they say, Americans gave you money to do relief, and you're spending about a third of that on development activities. All the development activities are related to trying to prevent the next famine in the ways I've talked about. Part of the problem then is that Americans have a view about what private and voluntary organizations do. Private and voluntary organizations, according to popular view, are relief organizations, and when they spend their money on development purposes, it loses something in the translation for the public at large. That, by the way, is not unexpected because these organizations go out and peddle themselves as relief organizations. And for the religious-based ones particularly, this is a tough problem because it's called lying to the customer, false advertising. And yet they haven't figured out a way to tell their donor publics what business they're actually in. Now, whether that's the major criticism that these groups were under, and I think the problem is not in how they spend their money, it's how they educate their donors. There are a couple of groups. There was one in California that was clearly out collecting money. If you look at the range of American domestic charities and look at the ones that are on the list of the National Information Bureau, which is kind of the watchdog agency looking at charity organizations, you will see a lot of them on the questionable list on the domestic side and fairly few on the international side. But there are problems in both. And one of the problems the Trade Association of Non-Governmental Organizations has now, it's a new organization, it's called Interaction, and I work with them, is should they be a self-policing agency? And I think they should. And I think there's a lot of feeling in the community that they're going to have to do that. It is by no means I mean, I have no evidence to indicate that this is a large problem in relation to the total amount of monies collected in America for international development purposes. I would be very safe, I think, to say probably less than 5%, maybe less than 1%. But unfortunately, it's that one good news story on such an organization which really does tremendous harm to all the others who are very conscientious, whose people work at salaries that put them right in league with research assistants at universities in terms of remuneration. Yes.
I'd like to know how you view international political situation in Africa. Like, is the Soviet presence in Africa or Soviet bloc countries, like the Cubans and the North Koreans, would that factor complicates the problem of development?
Yeah. The most destabilizing political force in Africa, in my view, although I understand well the situation, I think, in Ethiopia, Mozambique, and Angola, is not from Moscow, it's from Pretoria. I think in terms of the damage done to economies, it would have to be, you'd have to say that 2 of the 4 current famine situations in Africa are South Africa caused and not Eastern Bloc caused. That is Mozambique and Angola. The situation in Ethiopia is different. It is a situation where an ineffective government, the Haile Selassie government, was replaced by a maniacal government. And what I worry about, frankly, is not only their politics, which I think is unfortunate, although I think it is quietly changing. That is, somebody came to my office recently who had been a really senior person in a private and voluntary group handling major resources, who has now gotten the Ethiopians to agree to joint venture in partially private capital rural development schemes in Ethiopia. Kind of unexpected. I worry part about that, the policies involved, but I worry more, frankly, about the sanity of their leader. I have long been a proponent of having a staff psychiatrist as a consultant for any Secretary of State we have, because it's one thing to say, not necessarily for the person himself, but the person the Secretary has to deal with. George Shultz, I think, is sane, but Mengistu, I don't think is. And I think we have to learn how to deal with people who really are off the deep end. And I judge that not from any news accounts, but from talking to people who were in his cabinet and had to deal with him personally, and what a life-threatening situation that was. Now, it happens that the Russians are the only people who can deal with Ethiopia. They've cut themselves off even from Chinese advice and Tanzanian advice and so forth. And it happens that the Soviet Union has been left scot-free from most of the equations in dealing with Africa. They came to the UN special session and they said the same thing that they have said now for at least 30 years. Well, folks, they said, you know, these problems were all caused by colonialism. We were never a colonial power in Africa, and it's up to the ex-colonial powers to solve these problems, and we wish them Godspeed. Now, or Mark's speed, but at any rate, and that excuse is wearing thin. I have a view on this, and that is that the Soviet Union is now trying, inch by inch, to get into the international economic system. It has applied for membership at the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade and been turned down by the United States, but that's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time when it will be in their advantage to seek membership in the IMF and the World Bank. And when they want to do these sorts of things, I think that's fine and dandy. and the long-term benefit of the world to create more interdependence. But I think that there ought to be very clear signals sent to the Soviet Union that when you become a player in the international system and want to be equated with Europe and North America, you pick up certain responsibilities as well. And it is up to the Soviet Union to start demonstrating that it is able to participate in the international economic system by not having these ridiculously outdated Molotov vintage excuses for working in the international system, but by demonstrating that they can extend the terms of finance on African debt, that they can become a constructive player in the economic development of places like Africa. That's a demonstration effect that is terribly important and is meaningful in the international economic discussion, just as Geneva talks are meaningful in the arms discussion. And I hope that we can start getting those kind of factors on the East-West agenda at some point.
I know we'd all like to hear Bob continue. We will have a chance this afternoon at 4 in 124 Ross, and also this evening at 8 o'clock in the gallery. So, and I think we're going to move us out of here in a couple of minutes. So, Bob, thank you very much.
Thank you all.